Welcome back, all you beautiful souls, to another episode of Aligned and Alive. I'm your host, Chrissy May, and today I have been looking forward to this for over the past week. I'm so excited to sit and share in conversation with a young woman who is the definition of a powerhouse. She is a self-made entrepreneur who set out to create a life beyond the chains of mediocrity. With self-motivation, grit, and hustle, she became a very successful entrepreneur at a shockingly young age, after living through a difficult childhood filled with many challenges. After graduating summa cum laude with dual engineering degrees from ASU, she went on to found and operate multiple companies in Arizona, including commercial and residential real estate sales, business and wealth coaching, 3 construction companies, and a national real estate brokerage. She is passionate about helping others who do not know where or how to begin, and acts as a living example that anyone can create the life that they once only dreamt about. And she is more than qualified to speak on this subject, as she became a self-made millionaire by the age of 25, owning a portfolio of investment properties and a residential and commercial real estate brokerage that is now franchised nationwide, called Real Estate at the Firm. Give it up for this superhuman Miss Hannah Hammond.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited to be here.
And the crowd goes wild. Jeez, girlfriend, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day.
Likewise.
Oh my gosh. So I have to give a shout out to Bobby Vasugi,
Yes.
who is the founder of Starry Foundation, for making this introduction. He was spot on when he had said, I have to connect you with this very special woman. I mean, the minute we met last week at lunch, it was like, who are you and where did you come from? Like, you just have this beautiful energy about yourself. I mean, everything you've accomplished at such a young age, it's so remarkable. So
thank you so much. And right back at you. I'm just trying to be like you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate that. So just shy of 28 years yourself, birthday next week.
Yeah, April 10th.
Oh my gosh. Party at Hannah's house.
Yeah.
So I've decided to make this a 2-part episode. In the first part, we're going to dive deep into your childhood. I really want to paint that picture for the listeners and viewers, touching on the challenges you faced, limiting beliefs that you learned and carried throughout the years, and how you were able to elevate past the pain. So those who are listening right now, maybe they're experiencing the same thing. They can learn how you were able to navigate that process. And the basis of everything I want to focus on, which is really important, I'm sure that you'll be able to talk about this more, is self-love, courage, and beliefs. So let's begin by taking everyone back to young Hannah, like all the juicy details and everything.
Yeah. So my childhood was interesting. I actually am a 4th generation native to Arizona, probably the only one that exists. But I knew at a very young age that the household that I was in wasn't something that I really enjoyed. And there was just a lot of feelings of, I guess I wasn't cared for or loved in the way that I felt like I should have been. And I realized that at like 6 years old. And people call me the McFlurry millionaire because my dad wouldn't buy me a McFlurry. And I told him, screaming and crying, I'm going to be a millionaire so I can buy myself McFlurries someday. So that's where the real passion began. And, I had 2 older brothers that were about 6 and 8 years older than me. And they picked on me a lot. Of course, they're big older brothers. And what they thought was playing and joking and hilarious, I thought, my life was ending. So a lot of that, from drowning me in the pool to body slamming me on the ground to telling me tip a cow and throwing me over the ground and grabbing my fat rolls as a little child and making fun of me. So a lot of that, which looking back, it wasn't a very fun experience. And I'm close with one of my brothers now, very much so. But, and then the lack of kind of parenting that I had from my father, he existed, but he's kind of like the house plant, he was there, but you didn't really realize that he was there. And he just didn't really provide for the family much. He still works at a pawn shop that he worked at when I was a child. So I knew that I wanted to get out of that environment. I knew I couldn't rely on a man. or, you know, all the men in my life mistreated me horribly or just weren't there for me. My mom loved me as hard as she could and the best she could and tried so hard to provide everything that I wanted in life. But she could only work with what she had as well. You know, we didn't have a lot of money or anything like that. So I just set out to figure out how to take care of myself and provide for myself and not be forced to be in a situation that I didn't want to be in the future. And I was just like, I could do this all by myself. I'm not going to trust anyone. I'm not going to work with anyone. I'm not going to connect with anyone. And it's just me, myself, and I. And I'm going to thrive and survive on my own because no one else is going to do it for me.
So you were really just in a state of survival almost. I mean, trying to do what you could since nobody else was there for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you feel any sort of connection with your family growing up? Like, did you have those emotional moments and experiences like a lot of people do? Like, did you take family vacations or did you have like dinners together? Like, was there any sort of a family unit growing up, or was it just so completely
it was
separate?
Chaos. Yeah. It's in my recollection, it was chaos to me. You know, we would go visit my dad's family in California here and there, but my brother and dad would be hitting each other in the car and we'd all be fighting. And, you know, my parents didn't have the best relationship for as long as I could remember, but they couldn't afford to split up either. And they were both, you know, Christians and didn't want to get divorced and those types of things. You know, my brother got into alcohol and drugs very early on, my oldest brother, and, you know, still suffers from addiction today. And then my other brother was great. I love him to death. He now is a business owner in Hawaii, but it just, you know, I knew I didn't want kids as a child. I knew I didn't want to get married as a child, and my whole life and it was a coping mechanism back then. And it was like the one thing I could control was business. It was my grades. I was the top of my class in every single class since kindergarten, you know, straight A's all the way through college. And that was like the controllable factor for me because I couldn't control my household. Right. So that was it. And then it became business. Business was something that I could control and excel at and be good at. And that's really where my identity formed around was entrepreneurship and, you know, making money. You know, originally it was about that. It was about making money and, you know, proving self-worth, I guess, for myself, because I had very, very low self-worth and was very insecure. And then eventually it evolved into something so much greater like it is today. And it's just the freedom that it provided for me to learn that money wasn't the happiness. It just allowed me the freedom to figure out what actually happiness was about.
Right. And it's so interesting that you actually went that direction, because so many people will go like your brother, you know, into the state of just numbing not to cope with what lack they didn't have experience at the house inside the home. So at least you chose a direction that provided a lot more, you know, fruitful and benefit. It's interesting. I just had Joshua Wenner. I don't know if you're familiar with him on the podcast. And he talked about how a lot of high achievers, and I know I've seen a lot in my circles as well, will throw themselves into work and business to avoid what they were going through, right? That feeling of emotional abandonment pretty much, right? So it's interesting. Now, were you able to go from that state of being where you received, I guess, that reward, if you will, from business, from throwing yourself into your studies and learning? Were you able to ever work through the deeper issues with that? Like, did you go to counseling? Did you do anything like that to actually work on your inner part? Or was it primarily just bypassing that whole experience and going straight into just studying?
Yeah, I'm just now starting to do the work. Honestly, this past, I would say 2 years has been a journey of healing for me, but more so this past year. You know, up until a couple of years ago, I had such extreme anxiety and depression. And if I wasn't working, I was not wanting to be alive, basically. And so once I got at it, I hit a certain point when I was about 25, when I did become a self-made millionaire. And I was miserable. And, you know, even when I lived in Hawaii and wasn't working, I was miserable. And my mom told me, wherever you go with you. And I'm like, well, that's a fact. And that's unfortunate because, you know, me was the problem. And I wasn't building good relationships because I didn't love myself. And I was having similar relationship patterns with, you know, men and things like that. So that's when I decided I need to step back, stop working 18 hours a day and really try to figure out who I am, what makes me happy, what is my purpose in this world. And everything changed from that point forward.
From finally able to recognize those patterns and then to start focusing more on self.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, I journal every day. I meditate every day. I do breath work every day. The whole spirituality thing, I always used to tell my friend, I'm like, God, what does spirituality mean? Because, I'm not a very religious person because my parents were very, very religious and whatever. That's a whole nother story. But, now I'm all these spiritual and amazing and kind of on the journey to self-actualization people have just been appearing in my life. And I'm starting to experience that journey. And it's been super amazing. And the level of joy and happiness that I have on a day-to-day basis now is like, makes me want to just cry because I never could have imagined that I could feel this way. Even 4 or 5 years ago, I could have never imagined that this is my life. So that's something I'm really passionate about, is providing a community and a support for other people who maybe feel like I felt for 20 plus years.
Well, right. I mean, you can now from experience help others through that. I mean, that's the whole point of it, right?
Right.
I always feel like, so our suffering doesn't go just for nothing, right? Like that's how I always look at it. If we can use our experiences to pay it forward and pave the way for others to, to hopefully streamline the process from not having to go through it for so long, as it's what it's for, right? So let's talk more about that. Because you shared on environment, and we know environment is key in being able to excel. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, it is. And people ask me too, like, oh, do you wish your environment was different? And I say no. I'm glad everything I experienced for a reason. It led me to who I am today. But your environment is a huge piece, externally and internally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then what would be your advice to those that are right now currently in a negative or toxic environment, and how they can break the chain so they can rise above it?
I think one of the most important decisions, if not the most important decision you make, is the partner you choose, as a significant other, and the friends that you choose to be around. And a lot of your environment, from my experience, a lot of my environment was completely based on the circles I was in, And so if you realize that, my energetic coach told me this: if you're around people, they either energize you and give you energy, or they suck the energy out of you. And you can feel that. Like when you're with someone, like when I'm around you, I just feel energized and excited and passionate and all those things. And then there's some people I go around and I'm like, you could feel it. You walk in a room, you're like, somebody's upset in this room, And so being able to just, take a tally on who's in my life that is providing value and lifting me up, energetically even, and then also financially and spiritually, and just more aligned with everything that you want to be, and who's not. And being able to just walk away and let go of, with love, the people that are not serving that for you, because you're not doing it for them either. Like if they're sucking the life out of you, you're probably sucking it out of them too. So I think it's an important thing. So I basically, there's very few people from my childhood that I still talk to. And I have one childhood friend that I talk to, and I love her to death. And most of my family I don't talk to. I have a relationship with my mom and my brother, but the rest of them I don't really talk to. And it's not resentment or anything like that. It's just, we didn't serve a good purpose, and they didn't bring out the best in me, and I didn't bring out the best in them. And that's okay.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that, because I find that a lot of people use that excuse, whether in my family, I have to talk to them. I have to nurture that. Or if there's any discord, I have to repair that so we can become family again and closer. And I don't always feel that's the truth. I think many times we are born into a family, and just because they're blood doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to give them a free pass to your next level of life.
Right.
I feel like now when you enter into your adulthood, they now have to earn it. And I just don't think that's talked about quite a lot. I feel it's like, I hear it all the time, even with just friends. Well, they're my mom or they're my sister. I kind of have to put up with her. No, you don't. This is where you start setting healthy boundaries and creating standards. Like if you want to be in my life, then you have to show up as such. And it's like, here's the barrier to entry to now being a part of it. And there's ways of doing it with compassion and kindness, but I think that's really amazing to hear that, because I don't hear that very often, that people have that strength to set that boundary and say no more, So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
I do, because I hear a lot of people that still put up with it, but that just goes to show how fierce you were too in your decision to become successful. And now, of course, enter into this journey of yours, of your self-discovery. Like, that's incredible. And that's what it takes. It takes that intentionality to make up your mind and know that what you want, your desire, outweighs all the other crap, right? Like, you just know I'm focused, I'm in my lane. And if you want to come along, then you better show up right. That's why you're a boss, Hannah.
Oh, thank you.
I'm telling you, take note. So what would be your top, I'm curious, because I know you read a lot too. What would be your top book recommendations to guide others towards a life of excellence, and specifically the life you've been able to navigate? So going from that toxic environment to one of freedom, essentially, is where you're at. It's free. What books helped you along that whole journey?
So I always put business at the forefront of everything, because if you don't have your basic needs, food, shelter, security, health, and all those things, it's really hard to find enlightenment and true passion and to be able to serve everywhere and things like that. But it's difficult because a lot of people ask me this questions, if I would change anything, what would I do if I could go back? And I always say, I think everything worked out exactly as it should have. And my pain was the initial root cause of my journey of entrepreneurship and business and self-success and things like that. But I never prioritized myself. And so I lacked the obviously joy of doing it. And then I also lacked the relationships, all the relationships that I missed out on building. I was just like so focused, even through school hallways, I would just mob to the next class, start my homework, start my essays, do this, wouldn't talk to anybody. In college, I don't have one number from college. I don't know one person from college. I just did me and didn't talk to anybody.
And that's why you're summa cum laude.
Yeah, probably. But
that's the secret.
Yeah. But now relationships are such a key part, and loving yourself is such a key part. And so until I loved myself truly, and I still obviously have issues with insecurity and lack of worth and all of that stuff. But until I was able to truly love myself, my business was only going to go so far, because relationships, genuine relationships, and serving other people and loving other people is the biggest catalyst to growth and impact that you can have on your life and other people's lives. So I forgot the question now that you asked me.
No, I just feel like you're just getting started. Like, that's the first thing that pops in my mind right now, hearing you say that. It's like you haven't even touched like the brink of what you're capable of, because now you're getting it. Like, now you're so self-aware and like what really truly is going to bring you to that fuller experience, right? Right. I mean, you have this already checked off the boxes, right? But now you're going into that next phase of your life. It's going to be fun to see like where you're going to be in a year from now.
Thank you.
Now that you're committed to this. I mean, that's really what it takes.
Yeah.
But it's that self-awareness that a lot of people don't even have. Yeah. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, the books.
I know. I'm like, I just went down a rabbit hole for sure. But yeah, thank you. So I always say Rich Dad, Poor Dad was my number one favorite book to get started, because that was the catalyst of assets versus liabilities. Here's how to, invest in stocks, buy real estate, create passive income, and have the passive income pay for your liabilities. And so I was so strict on that. I lived so frugally, and luckily I knew how. So frugally for so many years. I just recently, within the past couple of years, started to spend a little bit of money and live, nice. And I went to Europe for the first time last year, and, have nice things now. But I lived very frugally below my means for a long time, because all my money I went into buying assets that could create passive income. And then that passive income slowly built up over the decade that I've been doing it. And that gave me financial freedom. And so Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first book that I read to be able to understand that. So I always recommend everyone read that book, and it's super easy to read. And then from an entrepreneur perspective, Who Not How was a big changer for me, and 10X versus 2X by Dan Sullivan, who has a strategic coach program, and I think nationally or globally. But anyway, those are really great books for just expanding your business and thinking different and thinking bigger. And then on a personal level, The Power of Now. I'm rereading it right now. Yeah. And just learning to be present. And now I'm so aware, like I'll notice I'm down this rabbit hole in my own brain of thoughts. And then I'll catch myself now and I'll be aware. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm thinking. Before I was just living unconsciously. You're just being run by your brain, and you think you are your brain and you think you are your thoughts. But being able to separate your consciousness to an observer of your thoughts and not letting those turn into emotions and letting those emotions turn into actions and just laughing at them or whatever, that's a game changer. And it takes a lot of practice. And that's what the meditation practice helps you with, which I'm a work in progress. But that's a really big game changer. And then breaking the habit of being yourself. I'm reading that right now as well, which is by Joe Dispenza. That one's really good. It talks about how to separate yourself from your thoughts and how to be an observer of them and things like that, similar to The Power of Now.
Mm-hmm. Those are all great. Powerful recommendations. I mean, there's not one that I was like, no, that was yes, yes, yes. And I just thought, like, right now, thinking of like what you were just saying, like the belief that you have to carry too. I mean, mindset is everything, no doubt, but also like beliefs. And I actually wanted to go into that quickly because we're on the subject. So speaking of motivational self-development gurus that are amazing and very influential, you've heard of Jim Rohn? Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to have to gift you some books. It's awesome. He's so powerful, but he spoke often on the power of belief and how it can transform your very existence, which is also the force behind every monumental achievement. And so I'm curious, how have you been able to tap into and harness this force while working through adversity? Because you strike me as somebody who already has that mindset so dialed in, and your beliefs to know that you can do whatever you set your mind on. Like, how has that carried you through? How have you been able to really harness that and work through adversity? Because you are the queen at working through adversity.
Thank you. I just always believed I could, I just, I didn't feel like I had another option. I felt like I just had to, and I did it. And in high school or even, in high school, freshman year of high school, when people started partying and stuff like that, everyone would be partying and I would be asking the parents how they built their companies and how they did this and how they did that. So I was on a mission and nobody was going to stop me. And, it was driven from fear and then when I was exposed to like my best friend in high school, they lived on Camelback Mountain and he had a black card and I just saw them buy this and that in a private yacht in San Diego Harbor. And fortunately I was able to get exposed to a lot of that someone, in Farmtown, Iowa might not be exposed to at a young age. But I was like, this is amazing. And what they were able to do for other children, what they were able to do for me, I was able to basically live with them and have this amazing life that wasn't where I came from, but I knew that's where I was going. And so just having such a big why for why you want to go where you're going. And for me, it was, freedom and security. And that why drove me through everything. And now that all those, they say once you hit a certain level of income, your happiness doesn't go up anymore, right? Yeah. But now it's just fun. Like now I just want to see how big I could grow, because the more my business grows and my spirituality grows and all the things that I learn in life and can create in life, the bigger impact I can have on other people, because that's my legacy. I just want to impact as many other people as I possibly can while I'm here on earth.
No, that's beautiful. And you do such a great job at it. How did you have the courage to even go through that? Because for someone right now, I'm just thinking, I can just hear the listeners right now. Wow, she's different, right? Everyone has an excuse as to why they can't model and modify what you've already proven. So what do you tell people who maybe you say, God, Hannah, I would love to, live the life you have or, accomplish the things you've been able to accomplish? Like, do you think there's a level of courage needed in order to blaze through that, in order to get to where you're at right now?
For sure. I think it's your thinking. And that's where the mindfulness comes in, because I can hear people talk, even people that I mentor or coach. They're like, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm like, well, of course you won't if you're thinking like that. Like you're already creating the destiny before you even took your first step. And so you have to think differently, and you have to just because your brain is telling you you can't, that doesn't, if you don't identify with that any longer, then you're just like, okay, my brain is telling me, my brain's afraid. I have these, signals coming to me, but that's not me. I can do this. I am going to do this. And so retraining your brain and being aware of those thoughts, because those thoughts become emotions and those emotions become actions, is a very important piece to that. And people look at me now and they're like, oh, you probably had it easy, or you had a sugar daddy, or you grew up in a rich family, or you were some pretty blonde. Like, no, I was an ugly, fugly kid growing up. And like, it takes a lot of money to try to look good and pretty. And that's probably why I put so much effort into it, is because of the lack of self-worth that I had growing up. So it wasn't like just, easy peasy my whole life at all. It can even be a big setback too. Like in commercial real estate, right? People just write me off sometimes before they even talk to me, as they see my picture online or whatever. And they're like, right. Oh, she's not going to know anything about commercial real estate or business or money or anything like that. So it can definitely go both ways. But I think the mindset is the biggest piece there. And you can train yourself. It's not something that you are necessarily just born with. You have to be, you are able to train yourself how to get your mindset right. And they have mindset coaches like Relentless. I forgot that book. That's my favorite book by Tim Grover, who was the mindset coach for Michael Jordan. And you can but you can definitely be trained on how to shift your mindset and just go for it. Set a goal. What does success look like for you in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year? And then what are the, key measurable action items that I can put into place to accomplish those goals?
All good stuff. And it made me think of Arash Vasugi that I had on the podcast, Bobby's brother.
Oh yeah.
And he's in mindset. I'm going to be working with him. And he always talks about the power of repetition. And it's so true. So you talk about, repetition. Michael Jordan, how did he become so great? I mean, the guy was constantly practicing, right? And so, yes, you can absolutely retrain your mind. And it comes down to how intentional and focused can you be, disciplined for a long period of time. And I think it's important to note that it doesn't have to be hard. I think we overcomplicate things a lot of times, and it's just more of doing the fundamental stuff every single day, where it's just even maybe 1% better every single day. Not 100% better, maybe just 1%. You do one thing a little bit better every single day, that's going to stack over time. Next thing you know, you're an expert, or you are becoming the go-to person in your field. So I agree. I think mindset is everything. You must win in your mind first, because if you don't, how do you expect to win anywhere else?
Yeah. It makes it difficult.
I mean, belief sees the invisible and knows that it's possible, right?
Right.
And then you can have clarity in your vision. Like having that burning desire and knowing that, I just think almost having like children, like kids just look at the world with such awe and wonder. We can look at life as like a playground, so I don't know. Like, I think when you mentioned it being so fun right now, life can really be that way if you choose to allow it to be, rather than this seriousness,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And it's hard. It's because people always say like, oh, the balance, right? And I wasn't balanced for a long time. I had no balance.
Yeah. I love that word.
Yeah. So it's hard. There's sacrifices. And I think there's a healthier way to go about things. And like, I wouldn't have probably been a self-made millionaire by 25 if I would have had a balanced life and went to all the parties and did all the things. But now I'm very balanced, and I feel like my business is growing much faster because I prioritize going to the gym. Yeah, I didn't used to go to the gym because I thought I had no ROI and I didn't have time to do my work and call my clients and all those things. And but now having the self-love and care for myself to feel more confident and be more confident, and also network there also. So I think balance is important as long as everything is aligned with integrity. Yeah.
That's really where it stems from. It's so true. I'm curious, how do you set yourself up to win for the day? Like in your mind, is there a mantra that you like doing? Is there a special Hannah morning routine that allows you to get there?
I do have a morning routine.
Okay. I love to hear
every day. So I actually use the Oak Journal. You could Google it. Yeah. And so the first thing when I open my eyes is I write down what I'm grateful for that day. And you're just starting with a win right away. I'm like, gosh, this is such an amazing life and I have so much to be grateful for. What 3 things should I write down? And then I set my intention for the day every day, because it's easy to just go through the motions every single day. And soon enough, 10 years has passed. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, it's easy to be busy. Everybody can be busy, whether you're, homeless people can be busy all day, every day. And Jeff Bezos can be busy all day, every day. We all have the same 24 hours in the day. So I'm like, what is my intention for today? And make sure the tasks that are on my calendar are aligning with that intention. And if they're not, I either remove them or I delegate them. So that's important. And then making sure to adjust my schedule as needed based on that. And then I journal for 10 minutes. I journal and write down. Luckily, the Oak Journal kind of guides you on different things to journal about, but I do that. And then I have a nighttime routine where I read a physical book because I do podcasts. I listen to audiobooks all day long, but I read a physical book. Like The Power of Now is one that you really have to read and hold. And then I do breath work for 10 minutes. And you can find those on YouTube and things like that, which I'm new to breath work and it's insane. It's amazing. And that's kind of, I do like a meditative nighttime breath work. So it's meditating and breath work kind of 2 in 1. And then I journal about my day. I do a win review. And so a win review is what's working, what isn't working, and what needs to change. And all of this is based off of the intentions of my 1, 3, 5, and 10-year goals. And so I want to make sure I know exactly what I'm doing every day, the progress I'm making. And those goals I set are, their personal goals, their relationship goals, and their professional goals. And so just having that clarity and vision on a daily basis really keeps me on track and motivated and excited about the progress I'm making, the tweaks I need to change, and the following day to come.
I love that. It's also good. It reminds me of it's very similar to what I do. It's falling in love with your future self, and it's creating this magnificent obsession. And obsessions can be good or bad, right? But it's this magnificent obsession with where do I want to be in 1 year from now? Well, who's my future self 5 years from now? Who's my future self 10 years from now? And it's such a great process to go through, because if you stick with that and visualize that whole thing, it is bound to happen. It may not be exactly how you want it to happen, but it's bound to happen. Like, I don't think people recognize the power that we have within our minds. Like, we're constantly attracting every single moment of every single day, constantly. And so by you being that hyper intentional, I have no doubt you're going to hit every one of those goals that you have for yourself and those intentions.
Thank you.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's wild. And I do a vision board every year.
Okay.
And every time I look back at my vision boards, I'm like, well, I should start dreaming bigger, because I hit all of these things, and they just come, I knew I wanted to live in Paradise Valley. I wanted to be able to walk to the trailhead. I wanted a G-Wagon. I wanted a warm blood from Europe, like all these things that I was 5 years old dreaming of, or 7 years old, whatever, very young. And then I moved into this house, and I remember the moment. It's probably one of the best moments of my life. I hiked to the top of Camelback Mountain. I had my music in, and the sun was setting, and the wind was blowing on my face. And I just started bawling, and I'm not a crier. And I'm like, stop and smell the roses. Like, this is everything that you dreamed of as a child, and you did it, and you're here. And then at that moment, I felt like this is day one. Like, that was the beginning of the rest of my life. And, you attract everything and everybody. And that's why when things are happening in my life, I know I'm making those things happen. I'm not like, oh, this person screwed me over. It's like, no, I attracted something into my life, and I allowed something to happen in my life that led to an outcome of that. And I don't point the finger at the person or the event or the job or the money or whatever. I just look at me and like, what am I doing to attract these things into my life if they're not good? And how do I pivot and shift to start attracting things that are going to serve me and the people I'm around in my greater purpose?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so good. Because there's really incredible freedom in that process, because then you realize that you can be the problem, but you're also the solution. And when you lead from that mindset and that lens, life becomes limitless, because you know that once you attracted X, Y, and Z, if you can pivot quickly, you know that you can get to your goal or where you want to be, your destination. That's so good. All this is so good. You're just rewriting and reframing constantly. That's all it is, and not getting attached to outcomes, I think, is really important. Are you pretty good with that as well? Like, if it doesn't end up the way you wanted to, are you pretty good with allowing that to be a sign that it wasn't supposed to be?
Yeah. I would say my greatest asset has been resiliency, and my willingness to walk away at any point and restart, and my whole life will look different tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, next chapter. And so I've had multiple businesses. I used to own 3 construction companies. I no longer own those. I walked away from that. I walked away from my engineering cush corporate job that I had right out of college. And, they're like, name your price. I'm like, I don't have one, right? And so being able to walk away, I bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii and quit my job because my friend who was a counselor, she's like, you work too hard. You should quit your job and buy a one-way ticket. I'm like, all right, let's do it, which was a complete turn of events. So just having the resiliency and not being attached to everything, which probably is a problem for me too, because I don't get very attached to people. And so I probably let people go very easily. I've had, men tell me like, I feel like you could live without me. I'm like, of course I could live without you. Like, why? I'm not going to be, yeah, right. And that's not something you're supposed to say to the person that you're supposed to be with or whatever. But that resiliency is super important, because a lot of people will hold on to businesses because they started it.
Right.
And it's like, or they'll hold on to stocks, right? It's like, know when to cut your losses and being able to lose. Like I always say, I don't lose. I either win or I learn. And your losses are your greatest lessons. Like my biggest losses have been my biggest lessons that have helped me 10x on the next thing that I'm doing. And so now I look at them with atomic curiosity and I'm like, what's the lesson out of this? Analyze that lesson and then learn from it and grow moving forward. But it's okay to walk away from people. It's okay to walk away from jobs, businesses, cities, societies, like move, do different things and just make sure I always just wanted to see, what am I learning from this? What are the experiences I'm gathering and how can I do this better the next time around? And, following my happiness has always been the biggest thing for that. Like when I walk away, it's because I'm not happy on a consistent basis. My coach, he says, life should be good 90% of the time. You should feel good and happy and creative and joyful 90% of the time, whether it's your business, your relationship, anything that you're doing, your hobbies, because that's an A, right? 90 to 100, it's still an A. Like 10% of your life or business or relationships are going to suck because things happen. But you should shoot for 90. And I would hear people tell me that's not possible or that's unrealistic or that doesn't make any sense and that's just not real life. And I'm like, screw that. That is real life, because that's the life that I've worked really hard to build. And when it is just me, my life is great 90% of the time, And so surrounding yourself with people who align with that and contribute to that and that you contribute to as well is super important. So I don't believe you should be in a business that sucks the energy out of you and that you're absolutely miserable in. It's just, life is too short for that. And I didn't know that 90% of pure joy and happiness was possible because I didn't experience it until a certain point. And you only know what you know. And so a lot of people, unfortunately, live in what my coach calls the yellow or red zone. They live in a state of stress, anxiety, fear, lack of, and they've never been in the green zone where they feel alive and creative and passionate and joyful. And when you don't know what the green zone feels like, of course, you're gonna be like, that's not possible. Because I didn't think it was possible either. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, it's never gonna get better, no matter what. Even when I had financial success and I still was miserable, I was like, how does this change? So being able to prioritize that and find the green zone and be cognitively aware of how am I feeling at every point throughout the day and where's your energy at, and making sure you're making shifts as needed to make sure that you are in the green zone as much as possible.
I wish I had one of those dropping bombs like Brad Leia has, because she just drops some bombs right there. Woof! I love everything you just said, because I can completely feel I'm the same way. But how does someone really, it's easy for you now because you've done it so much. Like you're so decisive. I can feel that. And that's, I think, a big mark to your success, because you can pivot so quickly and easily. How does somebody, in your opinion, get out of that zone? Say they're stuck in the red zone right now or yellow zone, and they want to get to the green zone. What would be like your top advice to get into the green zone immediately?
Pay attention to who, what, where, when you feel energized and happy. Whether it's listening to a certain song, house music or high beat per minute music makes me feel that way. I get like pumped up and excited. Playing with your dogs. If that's something little like that, eating some food. Maybe you're in the red zone often because you're just working and you're not nourishing your body. Going to the gym. It could be little tweaks like that, or hanging out with your loved one, or maybe hanging out with your loved one, you notice you're in the red zone, or hanging out with your friends and just starting to, I used to write down, this feels good. This doesn't feel good. This gives me anxiety. This feels amazing. And so I actually used to set timers every hour when I was learning this practice to check in on myself. Every hour my phone timer would go off and it would say, how are you feeling? And I would write it down. How am I feeling? And then I'd write down, what am I doing right now? Who am I with? Where am I at? What activity and whatever. And so then I had a whole book of, wow, here's everything that makes me feel horrible. And one of them was the person I was dating, right? So I left. That was when I left that relationship. And here's everything that makes me feel amazing. And so even if let's say they're like, okay, well, I'm out of job and I need to pay the bills and my job stresses me out, but I have no other option. I get it. So if you're at a job and you notice this particular thing at this time of day, this meeting with this specific person gets me in the red zone, and you feel yourself doing that, take a breather, excuse yourself to the bathroom, do something quick and easy to get you back in the green, whether it's the song, the food, the sun, the whatever that you need. And so you can learn those little tricks in the process of you getting more into the green zone and as you transition fully there. And it takes time. It takes a whole evolution of your life. You know, my day-to-day now is nothing like my day-to-day used to be when I learned these habits.
It's so good. It's self-regulation. And I think that is the quickest key to, like you just said, getting to where you want to go, because oftentimes people think they can't get out of toxic environments or negative relationships and things like that if they feel really stuck. However, if you can still work through, like I look at it this way, it's an opportunity for you to learn more. It's like you can learn how to better regulate yourself. So while you're transitioning from that environment, you start getting stronger and stronger and stronger until one day you're like, I'm out, right? Like there's one example, because you just know you have that power within now to do so, rather than just doing nothing at all and just giving up. Yeah. So if you are going through a difficult time and maybe you are around a circle of friends that are all red zones, I mean, do whatever you can to emotionally regulate yourself and your nervous system to start healing and getting stronger and stronger.
Right.
I think that's a great process. Yeah. And go outside, get in the sun. We live in Arizona. For those that live here, there's no better place. I go for power walks a lot. If I'm in a real like tizzy, I'll just get outside and I'll start walking and put my face to the sun, and it instantly energizes. Or grounding. You ever done grounding?
Yeah.
Grounding's great. Those are all really good. All good stuff. Well, I'm looking forward to diving deeper in part 2. Yes. Because I mean, I believe this episode really set the foundation for what is necessary to dig oneself out of any trenches and set themselves up for success in a fruitful future. I mean, really, you gave such detailed steps that people can take right now. And I love the whole journaling every hour. I have a timer for every 3 hours. Okay. That's my timer. And my timer is to remind me essentially of my bigger vision, my future self. And so I get into that deliciousness of my visualization and I feel like I'm already there. So that's my every 3 hours, but I love the every hour. I'm going to do that. So watch out, people. If you're around me every hour you take my book out, I might be writing about you. He doesn't make me feel good. Yeah. We are going to get granular with Hannah in the next episode so you can learn how to maximize productivity and what key strategies to use for success. And we'll also touch on commercial real estate and additional opportunities that are available right now for all my entrepreneurs out there. There are opportunities. You just have to see it. And she's the gal for it. And speaking of opportunity, I want to make sure I can't sign off until I share this. Our women's 2-day immersion is taking place next month in Sedona. I'm co-hosting with Maria Teresa Chavez, who is flying in all the way from Peru to hold this special retreat. We're going to be right off of Oak Creek, which is very healing and beautiful waters. I think Hannah's not going to join us. Yeah, she's going to join us.
So excited.
It's just an opportunity to experience a powerful reconnection to your essential self. That's really what it's about. And who doesn't need that? And it allows you to flush out any limiting beliefs that you may be harboring, holding on to, specifically on a cellular level. A lot of times we logically think we release stuff, but this is a great process to move through for 2 days with Maria and myself. So you can head on over to christinemay.com for more information, or just click the link in the show notes. Thanks again for being here today. And I can't wait for part 2. In the meantime, where can people find you at?
So my Instagram is at Hannah B. Hammond, and Hannah has an H at the end of it. Just follow me on there. My company accounts are linked to that account as well. And feel free to message me or reach out. And I always respond personally to everybody.
Thank you again. And I will see you in part 2.
Thank you.